everybody. Welcome to the training, learning, and development community. Happy Monday to all of you. Thanks for joining us. Let's see, we've got a bunch of people already in. This is great. Trish, great to see you. Kim, of course, Don, JR, Alicia, Cheryl, Celine, Gabby, Mike Peacock, Roger Whitaker, Christopher, Stacy, Perva, Nicole. Wow, there's a lot of people. I can't read them all because it's just going to go for multiple pages. But thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited about this conversation. We're going to be talking about onboarding, and we're talking with Daniel Shirley from Ziplyne, who reached out to me in our Slack group, and this is like a conversation that I know all of you know that we've kind of covered a bunch of times. In fact, I think Gabby, who's in the audience right now, we had a TLD cast with her to talk about onboarding. But I think that Daniel has a really interesting perspective on onboarding, on change management, on digital transformation. So I'm happy to have him here as a guest today. So thanks for that, Daniel, or Dan. I can call you Dan. Right?
Dan's good. Yep.
Yeah. And so let's start off. You are currently with Ziplyne, right? I think you're like a project specialist and enterprise sales. Tell us a little bit about that and your background.
Yeah, of course. So I've got about 7 or 8 years background in SaaS in general. So typically the organizations I've been with, it's been in some sort of SaaS type of position. But most recently, in my current role at Ziplyne, I'm focused on working with organizations, specifically around digital transformation, change management, in helping those organizations adopt their new and changing systems that they're implementing at their within their workforce or with their customers or partners, any type of user. And my role specifically is focused on making sure that our product Ziplyne is being implemented on top of those systems, whether it be SAP, Workday, Salesforce. You go down the line, we would work on any sort of web-based system to help onboard, train, and support users as time goes on.
Nice. So one of the reasons why I think that this particular conversation is important is because Daniel, you're not an instructional designer. In fact,
No.
You're not like formally an L&D person. You actually reside kind of outside of that in the perimeter, but you're very much interested in how onboarding and all of that relates to us as L&D professionals.
Yep.
And I think that given the amount of disruption or the digital transformation that's happened in the last year, I think it's important for us, for the folks in L&D, to be able to kind of have other perspectives on how change management is happening now. And so that's why, I'm really grateful that you're here willing to have this conversation with us. And everybody in the audience, I have some questions that are already in the Ask a Question area at the bottom of the screen. You guys can check them out, vote them up if you want, and that's what we're going to primarily be going through as we have this conversation. So, Daniel, talk a little bit about your interest in L&D and how it relates to, like, why you basically want to have a conversation on TLD cast about this.
Of course. Well, first, Luis, thanks for having me here. Super excited to be here. When we think about what we're doing at Ziplyne, I like to tell my team that we really are in the business of learning. At the end of the day, we're helping users pick up and learn software and reach a level of proficiency that we all hope those users can reach. And in my work, especially I'd say over the last 6 to 4 months, I've been specifically reaching out to instructional designers, trainers, people who are focused on L&D to really learn what makes them tick, what do they need in order to do their job best. Because it's funny, the business we're in at Ziplyne, we're touching a lot of different departments. It's not just L&D, it's IT, HR, any sort of business unit, but it's L&D where this seems to overlap most with. And the reason why I'm most kind of excited and interested in your perspective is because you guys know the users, the learners, and how they're digesting content best. And if we can align with you guys, then I find that we can align with almost anyone within an organization. So I'm really trying to champion with people like you, Luis, and others within the L&D world, so that I can learn what do we need to do on the Ziplyne side to help organizations succeed in new and changing systems, or change management as they call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into this. Now there was something that you had kind of brought up in our initial conversations when you were talking about onboarding. You had actually mentioned user adoption. So can we start out there, just because I know user adoption, that particular term is going to come up in our conversation, but what is the difference between onboarding and user adoption?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as we said in the green room, Luis, it's actually a very good question. It's almost up for debate right now. If you say user adoption to most people, they're going to think it's onboarding. And I don't necessarily think that's wrong, but this actually goes into a big challenge that I'm seeing in organizations, which is that when you talk about user adoption, everyone's focusing on onboarding. They're focusing their time and resources on the onboarding phase, and then that continued education after the onboarding is it's dropping off, right? So what I see user adoption is the is allowing users to reach their goals past onboarding, going into completing processes in real time and in less time, the tasks, the different things that they're expected to do. If those users can complete those processes or reach those goals that they're trying to achieve, then that to me is user adoption. There are levels of user adoption, of course, right? Full adoption, there's sometimes people aren't reaching that full adoption, but the way I see user adoption is just reaching that goal of allowing a user or getting a user to achieve a process or task they have in mind, and to confidently do that time and time again.
Okay. And so relating that to onboarding, like it seems like user adoption is more specific to, would it be to, like, say more specific to a skill when it comes to the onboarding process, and onboarding is kind of more of a general thing? Am I out kind of on the right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think onboarding would be a stage where, I think you can tell me too, within onboarding, I feel like with a lot of organizations, there's a time frame. And then once that time frame is passed, then the users have moved on from those training materials or those resources, and now it's almost on them to adopt that software. So how are we allowing organizations or users or learners to confidently release themselves from that onboarding phase and go out into that production environment to confidently complete those processes? And this is what gets into digital adoption solutions. Is once you've left let's say an LMS, and you're now in that big, bad, scary world of a production environment as a user, what is available to you in terms of resources to confidently do those processes that you may have learned last week or 2 weeks ago? You may not remember that stuff. So being able to go out into that production environment and complete those tasks or those processes, I think is what I would label as full adoption. And within onboarding, like I said, it's kind of a drop off that we see, and then an organization might take their hands off just because it's too sucking resources out of the organization to try to keep that learning experience all the way through, and especially at scale.
Right. No, I like that. I'd love to hear anybody in the audience, in the chat, if you guys have any commentary on that. I'd love to see it. I do love Alicia's comment right here. She said, too many use the term onboarding, but really just mean initial orientation.
It's great.
And that kind of, that speaks to me. Okay. So I have one of the most voted up questions right now, focused on remote onboarding, is like, what do you see as some of the biggest remote onboarding challenges?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, it would be, from the experiences I've seen, it would be presenting uh, role-based training or customized training at scale. So because everyone is now on their own in their homes, how do we create training so that it speaks to the user or the learner and what they're doing inside that application? Let's say we're talking about training for Salesforce, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How can I access that training that just speaks to me and what I do in Salesforce, so that I feel more motivated to engage with that training, right? So because everyone's remote, it's hard for the organization to say, oh, I know that this person does this inside Salesforce. Let's give him this type of training. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the real problem is that, or the challenge is that it's hard for organizations to do that at scale, to say, oh, Luis is signing into Salesforce, we're going to present him the exact information that he needs to see, versus a one size fits all type of training. Here's everything you need to learn for all the different user roles or user types inside Salesforce. And then you, Luis, have to go into that training to find what just pertains to your job, right? So
Right.
my biggest challenge that I'm seeing in organizations is presenting role-based training or customized training at scale to users who are all remote, maybe all over the world or all over the country.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, if anybody else in chat is having that same kind of challenge, just go ahead and post in there. I'd love to see if that's something that you guys are seeing. And so, and I'm sure we're just going to get to it, but you got a solution for that?
You got some time, Luis?
I know. I mean,
You know,
not
yeah, no,
like
there.
not
So
pitch it too much, but yeah, I'm just curious. That is a
yeah,
huge challenge.
yeah, definitely. So through an open API, through whatever the software solution is, let's say it's Salesforce, a solution like Ziplyne can identify who that user is, right, and what role they have in the company. So there's some sort of parameter that gets defined when they sign in that says this is a salesperson, or this is an admin, or an analyst, or a line manager. And then off
Mhm.
that parameter, you can trigger the right guidance, right?
Okay.
So imagine building all of the guidance in a one size fits all manner, but then
Mhm.
dropping that guidance in these buckets to say, okay, for this user group, we're going to present this guidance, versus this user group, we're going to present this guidance. And then based off that parameter that gets defined in the application when they sign in, then the right guidance will show up, right?
Mhm.
Now, there's something I would like to build off that, though. There's a second level to that, which is not only role-based training, but activity-based training. And what I mean by that would be someone signing in to an application for the very first time is going to need a different experience versus someone signing in for the 50th or the 100th time, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
can we identify that and present the right guidance based on that parameter? And the answer is yes as well. So, for that first time user, let's give them a checklist of these 4 or 5 things that we want them to learn. And then once they've done those 4 or 5 things, then let's present the next bit of information. So it's a more bite-sized, I think in the L&D world, you can tell me, it's a more bite-sized learning, more chunked learning for the user, so that it's not, hey, here's everything you need to learn, but hey, we know you're signing in and you're a new user. We're going to
Yeah.
give you this level, so that now the guidance or the training is scaling with the user as they're growing with that application over time, right? So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
so it's not just the role based or that type of user group type training, but it's also activity based. Are they a new user or a power user? And based off that, present the right guidance.
Right. So that kind of reminds me of like just going to Kim had posted about performance support in the chat. And that's sort of like, for me, that feels like it's like a really targeted sort of performance support,
Exactly.
um, sort of plugging into that. Yeah.
Yep.
So, all right. Excellent. So let me get into this other highly upvoted question. What kind of mistakes are you seeing organizations make when it comes to digital transformation and change management? And is any of that specific to L&D?
Yeah, so I'd say L&D is a part of it, and the reason why I say that is because the main challenge I'm seeing is that organizations are attacking change management in a very isolated, siloed manner across departments. So usually it's assigned to just one department, and then that department is kind of responsible for driving that. When if you, in reality, if you can take different departments, business units, let's say L&D and business units, and combine them and have them work together, then you're going to be able to provide a better solution. I've seen organizations that they tie in someone from L&D and a business analyst, and that business analyst knows these processes very well. They know the technicalities, the nuances of the application that they're, an analyst for, and then they use that L&D person to basically create that type of training. And if they can come together and deliver that, then you've got something really great. But the challenge that I've seen for a lot of organizations is they're thinking about it in much more of a siloed manner, saying, oh no, it's just this department that will work with this. But
Right.
on the other side, we've seen organizations that have merged these units. And this is something
Mm.
I'm seeing, and I think a lot of businesses are going to have to do to stay more agile within change management and digital transformation, is that merging of units to really create the best solution possible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that traditionally it feels like L&D has been siloed off, within the organization like pretty often, but then now that's got to change for us to be able to
100%.
evolve and navigate what the future looks like. L&D has to be has to become a larger part of sort of the organizational strategy, and so that's what you're speaking to there, right?
100%. And if I may, without being too Zipline focused here, the what we're trying to do is we're trying to allow people in L&D to build this type of guidance, but the guidance lives in app, right? So now, let's say for example, you're building guidance that's on Salesforce again. That experience of building guidance on an application is now bringing you more into IT, for example, because we're no longer in the LMS, we're on the production environment. So normally with a digital adoption solution, it does require some sort of coding or knowledge of jQuery or CSS. And with
Hmm.
Ziplyne, it doesn't require any of that. So we're very non-technical in nature, which allows us to go to L&D and bring those people in to build the training because they know that content that they would like to put out there. And a solution like Ziplyne is allowing now trainers, SMEs, people who maybe don't know how to code to now put their training inside an application or directly on top. As we like to say, it's an overlay of training. So no, like I completely agree, Luis. I've seen a lot of instructional designers or just people in L&D that feel like they are siloed off, and now giving them the tools to be able to put their training on an application in real time is tying them now back into a bigger part of the company, not just the kind of coursework, right? And again, I think the coursework is definitely necessary, but there is some sort of blended learning model at play where you can have your LMS, but you can now also have your guidance or your training on top of a production environment or a live application.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. So I'm
Yep.
gonna just read a couple comments off of chat because I think these are good ones, and these are sort of relating to, I would say, like the onboarding processes within an organization. Like Roger saying, we have Teams channels for each application we support. New employees can submit questions or issues they're having. Our support analysts monitor these channels and respond with help and answers.
Mm,
This is for not just new employees, but for anyone that needs help.
mm.
So that's really interesting. So that's Roger, that would be and so that is an L&D function at your organization.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Nicole saying we just implemented something similar to this with our new ERP implementation, but it doesn't target the specific users you're speaking to. We built them all together, and users can search for what they need on any page in the system they are on and get on the spot performance help that they need. Right.
Mm,
Okay.
mhm.
Right.
I think people in L&D refer it also as to just-in-time learning.
Right.
I've heard a lot of instructional designers call it
Hmm.
just-in-time learning. Yep,
Hmm. Hmm.
100%.
And Kim has been relating kind of the whole conversation to kind of technical writing, and technical writers trying to get a seat at the table for decades. Same old challenge, new permutation.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So this is good stuff. Now, what are you seeing that will contribute to like a successful remote onboarding process, and when within the contents of an organization, right? Because I mean, I've seen onboarding processes fail, but what are you seeing? Like, say, success stories. What do you think helps an organization have a successful remote onboarding process?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's all about engagement. Like
Right.
if you're building content that isn't getting engaged with, then you're not. It's not going to work, and it's going to fail altogether. Then you're going to have to build a lot more retraining and upscaling materials, etc. So it literally always, as far as my experience goes, will boil down to how engaging the content is. If it's not engaging, if it's static, if it's not customized, then people aren't very the user isn't very enticed to learn. So that's the real challenge, right? Is how do we make it so that it's engaging and easy for them to interact with?
Hmm.
So for me, it's keeping it engaging, and then the other thing I would mention is um, being able to quickly kind of whip up training, not just being able to kind of stay agile. I guess is my thing. Is you can't go in with a set plan because it's never going to go completely to the way you think it's going to go. So having some plans in place for an efficient kind of way to create new training that's maybe a little bit different based on user feedback.
Hmm.
So staying efficient and agile in that way would be really important. And again, I know I mentioned this in the beginning, Luis, but like I think it's important too to like have a plan that goes past onboarding. If it's
Hmm.
just with a focus on onboarding, then the user is gonna they could be passing that course, but once they get through that course, it's kind of like hands off at that point, and we're still seeing a lot of support tickets hit the desk.
Yeah.
So it's really has to be a philosophy or a strategy that is almost with the life cycle of the user,
Yeah.
not just past the onboarding. It is really interesting, and the main driver I'm seeing though is low engagement.
Hmm.
And I was just to kind of give you a little bit of experience. Uh, Currently talking to an organization that is still relying on PDFs and more static learning materials for a workforce that is completely mobile. So this workforce is out in the field; they're completely remote, and they're still leaning on PDFs, and they do have an LMS, but it's these people are on mobile devices. So if we can put ourselves in the shoes of the user or the learner, do we really think that that's going to get it done for someone who's out in the field? Doesn't have time to sit at a computer. They're just on a mobile device. So being able to create content that's not just a PDF, but something a little bit more interactive to boost that engagement is definitely going to change the game. Not as much leaning on like a legacy method, like a PDF.
Yeah, yeah. I think Christopher has a really interesting comment here. He says this is really blurring performance support and training, and I'm not sure that they're the same thing. And that's a really good point. Um, and I do have. Oh gosh, I had just thought of an interesting question about onboarding, and I just lost it when I saw that comment. Okay, sorry. I'll just move on to something. Well, I guess sort of what I was thinking was that, especially in the last year, you have folks that are having to really tackle digital transformation, and then um and completely shift their onboarding processes, and then they need to be agile too. I mean, what have you seen with people? I mean, have you seen anything with people that have had to go through that, like the massive digital transformation, and sort of like how are they approaching change management and still, having to sort of evolve into an organization that can be agile. I mean, is that even realistic?
So are you saying in terms of the like digitalization of the organization as they're kind
Right.
of bringing on new applications?
Yeah, yeah, and I guess I could put it into sort of my own sort of personal perspective on it. Like,
Yeah,
I used to work for like a finance company that was very, very old school,
yeah,
and the thought of digital, and this wasn't that long ago, just a couple years ago, the thought of digital transformation was like, I mean, it would just, as soon as you mentioned the word, everyone would just start to sweat. And then,
right.
of course, me being a technologist, on my side of things, I was arguing like, you just got to take it on. But it's hard for me to imagine those guys, like, as they're, how they're conducting themselves now with the last year, the way that it's been, and how to do
Yeah,
onboarding because they're still growing. And
yeah.
then at the same time, still be agile.
Mhm.
Um, have you seen any processes like that, or even like how you guys may have been able to solve that type of a quandary?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the examples that I immediately think of when you bring up something like that is an organization who they have a lot of legacy applications that are they either have to get a new entirely new system or that system itself is iterating on its own, and they're in an interesting quandary, like you said, or an interesting situation. Or even another example would be organizations that are acquiring other companies or organizations and bringing on different users from different companies and trying to consolidate them onto one system, which can be really, really tough. So um, I'd say the lens I'm kind of reading that through would of course be through something like Ziplyne. And when I'm thinking about that, it would just be the ability to uh, create sort of training that is always kind of it's sitting on top of a system or an application, but it can be whenever things change, like a process or a new module gets added on or something like that, you can easily just kind of pull up that training and edit it in any sort of way rather than trying to produce new materials,
Mm-hmm.
which we can find would be very expensive or resource sucking from a company perspective. So not to get into too technical here, but something like Ziplyne is a browser extension, which kind of just allows you to go into that extension and edit things based off new processes or new feature rollouts that are happening within an organization. So
Mm-hmm.
typically, a company without a digital adoption solution is building new training materials or something, or some sort of course for those learners. But
Mm-hmm.
to build that training and put it on top of on top of an application and then edit it accordingly and just reproduce it or
Right.
redeploy it
Uh-huh.
is a very efficient way of kind of keeping up or staying agile with those changing applications. Because it's very interesting because these applications like Salesforce, Workday, SAP, Oracle, they're changing at such a drastic rate.
Yeah.
They're adding new things on. Different pathways are being built, and as far as I know, I'm not so into the L&D world that I know exactly what a instructional designer would do with that. But
Yeah.
I've kind of seen that it requires new training to be built or new materials that would have
Yeah.
to be produced. So rather than having that kind of new production, just taking what you already have and editing it to support that whatever just got added on.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I love it, and I love the fact that actually that you're outside of L&D and that you're really trying to answer these questions.
I'm trying my best,
Yeah,
man.
you've got this whole group of people in here, and Alicia has like some real gold right here. I think that you'll appreciate. She says, to me, L&D isn't just about training; it's about suggesting solutions to the organization, and in onboarding, showing new hires what support there is. A lot
Yeah,
of times, I'm asked to solve things, and training isn't necessarily the best answer.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's absolutely relevant. Thanks for posting that. Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit, you know, like we were saying earlier in the green room, the user adoption space is huge right now, right? It's like there's a ton of potential, lots of room for growth.
Yeah.
What have you seen over the last year? Like, um, with everybody working from home and remote onboarding being kind of the rule, what have you kind of seen within that space? Like some of the changes that that might impact how L&D folks do their work.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd say one of the a big change within the space that we're in is automation of processes. Something that we're looking and getting into. We're not there yet, but it seems to me that a lot of digital adoption solutions are going more and more into minimizing the amount of clicks that a user is taking inside of an application. And I think that's left up for debate as to if that's the right thing or not. But that is the direction that a lot of solutions are going in is click automation. Um, and then the next thing that I would focus on within the space or keep an eye out for is how are these solutions that are now sitting on top of interfaces, how are they dealing with the changing interfaces? So this is a really big problem or challenge in the space is imagine building guidance that are pointing to elements on a screen, but then those elements change, right? So
Mhm.
what happens then? Um, and in our space, if you're familiar with some other companies in the space, I won't name names, uh, the guides will break. The guides will break no matter what company we're talking about because those elements that they were pointing to, that the little pop-ups were pointing to, can no longer recognize that that new element that was pointing at it, right? So the new kind of direction in the space or where the space needs to go is to keep up with those changing interfaces, or at least to let the instructional designer or trainer know that that guide is broken. So just to kind of build on this, Luis, say that you're building guidance on top of Salesforce and then Salesforce changes, then those guides break. The person who built those guides doesn't know that these guides are now broken. So users on the end side, the learners, are now interacting with broken guides because this interface is changing at such a rapid rate.
Mhm.
So building in a safety net, this is kind of where the space is going, is
Yeah.
building in a safety net so that the person building the guide now knows that that guide is broken, whether it's some automatic notification that goes out or some type of,
Yeah.
little bump that goes to the author to say, hey, this guide is broken, go back in and reselect the new element that's now on the screen. So overall, where the space needs to go, like where everyone in our space needs to go, is a system that's a little bit more um, responsive and proactive to interface changes, because
Yeah.
that's really what we're relying on is the element IDs and selectors that are on the screen. And if those are changing, then our big great guidance that we're building is broken. So
Right.
being able to link up with the author or builder to say, hey, you need to go fix this guide, is something that is going to be really important for organizations to keep up with those changes on the interface.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Trish is saying maintaining content is so key. It's a great way to lose learner trust if it's not updated or working.
100%. That's exactly it. If I'm a end user or a learner and I'm interacting with a guide that's broken or not getting the job done like it's intended to, what is incentivizing me to go back into that learning to then use it again, right? So being able to identify those breakages or those discrepancies of the adoption solution and the interface are having is going to be really key and important. So that's something that we're really focused on at Ziplyne is keeping that operational overhead or the maintaining of the guidance very low for the people building them.
That's great. Rome
Yeah.
is asking, he's saying that companies like Salesforce, Workday, Microsoft, SAP are all creating digital user adoption practices.
Mm.
What is the missing piece?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. So just to build off what Rome's saying there, A lot of these really large companies are building adoption solutions that sit on top of their own systems, and the missing piece there is that all of these systems that Ro mentioned, Salesforce, Workday, SAP, et cetera, are all very customizable.
Mm,
So what happens if I have Workday and I change or edit my Workday environment or instance so drastically that the guidance can't keep up with the new kind of customization that I've put onto my system. So what a solution like Ziplyne can do is it allows you to build the guidance and create the guidance according to your processes or your new customized instance, right? So
mhm,
the training that these other companies are building, or the in-app guidance, I should say, it's good, but it's more out of the box for kind of the basic processes. But after a certain level of customization, that guidance can no longer support it. So Ziplyne's giving you that ability to customize it according to the processes that you have on your system,
mhm.
which is really important because all of these enterprise solutions are so customizable. Um, so it's hard to keep up with, but having a solution like Ziplyne's allowing organizations to keep up with those customizations.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know, is there any predictability that can be applied to any of this stuff? I'm like, because it's user experience. Maybe that's impossible, but I'm just wondering, since it's technology and you have all of these data points that you might be able to track, if there is any of that that's built into it or
Yeah,
could be. But,
that's actually a really good point, Luis, which is like a lot of organizations ask, oh, you might have guidance on top of Oracle or SAP. Can we build off that? Because there are a lot of authors or builders that are building out this guidance, and um, it's almost like we're sitting on a gold mine of all of this type of guidance that can be used in other organizations. So um, that's a very interesting point, and something that we do talk about with organizations is what are best practices for building training on top of SAP or Salesforce based on what you guys have seen or what your partners have seen. Um, so we're open to those kind of conversations for sure.
yeah, and maybe just even designing for that predictability.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
I want to mention there's a Roger has a comment here that is kind of I think I would say it's kind of typical that this scenario. He says he has a Confluence site that has the curriculum a new employee needs during onboarding training. A majority of them are links to the resources, and these resources are maintained and updated regularly by our development teams. Works fairly well as long as the dev team keeps on top of it. And that I think that's the scenario I've actually experienced at a couple organizations I've worked with is exactly that, a Confluence site that you sort of have to sit in there with and that's where you do your onboarding. But I have to say, like, that's where the engagement part of it is really a challenge, because going and just clicking through a Confluence site can be really, really tedious.
Right. We're getting to a point in the world where we need to almost give the user what they want, right? I
Mhm.
think the user expects to get that instant gratification where they can pick up an application and, if not learn it right away, at least be able to access the training while they're inside that application. So I do think that links are good because if you have a link available to you and that drives you to an external resource that really hits home on that process that you're trying to figure out, that might be a good thing for the user. So
Mhm.
if we can actually use a digital adoption solution to also drive those links inside, let's say a guide that
Yeah.
let's say you're going through a guide, you're going through step A, B, C, D, and then on E there is a,
Mhm.
a link that's available to you that you might want to click on, and that drives you to that article. Then that's great. And what I like to talk to the instructional designers about is there is a lot of content that's getting built, but it's not getting the traffic or visibility that it really deserves. So
Right.
can we use the overlay of the digital adoption solution to drive the users to those articles of knowledge. So it's a kind of a fine balance that we need to achieve, is how much help can we give a user without
Mhm.
having them go to another tab and another tab and another tab and driving them away from that process that they were just trying to complete, right? So
Right.
it's a really fine balance that we need, but I think it's just going to require more and more conversations with the end user or the learner to understand what they want and what they need. And
Right.
the real answer so far is something that's in app and available to me right then and there, not opening up another tab and getting me away from you know uh, the application I was just trying to learn.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. I'm going to add that Roger did post a follow up that he said that there is always follow up sessions with me and an SME after they've gone through the resources, gives them a chance to ask questions and get further demonstrations and instruction. Yeah, no, that I'm sure that's definitely helpful, and make sure that people are paying attention. All
Right.
right, so I'm going to ask this one last question. This one's a little bit of a challenge. It's from Christopher Yellen,
Sure.
and then we'll wrap it up. But he's asking, I've looked at a few of these guidance oriented training solutions before, but I'm skeptical.
Mm,
Beyond the accessibility benefits, that
mm,
it's right where people need it, what evidence is there that this is more effective than traditional e learning?
mm,
After all, this is guidance and not practice. Is
mm.
that anything you can take a stab at?
Yeah, I mean, the evidence would be in the reduction in training time and retraining time, the reduction in support tickets that the organization is seeing, the increase in productivity of the user. All of these things we can track and generate and give back to an organization. Um, Especially within the analytics side, you can also see how much time it's taking a user to complete a process, and if we're helping cut down on that time. But I'd say the main things that you're looking at just to validate a solution like this would be training time, retraining time, and support tickets. Support tickets will really give you a good indication as to whether or not it's doing its thing. Um,
Right.
those would be the three things I would say to respond to that.
Oh man, thank you, Dan. Dan, that's great reply to that. I really appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up, and I wanted to mention that on Community Day, which is on Friday, February 12th, you're going to be in there. You're going to have a booth, or Zipline's going to have a booth.
Yeah,
People can pop in, sit at a table, talk to whoever, and
hang out. Yeah,
learn more. Yeah, and so thanks for participating in that. And folks, if you haven't heard about Community Day, just go to the tldc.com website. You'll find it in the menu there. It's something we're doing for the community on Friday, February 12th. It's an all-day thing. We're going to have a bunch of sessions. We're going to have speed networking and topic tables, and it's just going to be kind of like a virtual event with it's pretty much just to celebrate the community. So join us there. I'm sure you'll be able to talk to Daniel if you log into that on Friday, February 12th. And with that, Daniel, please, can you put like your contact information in the chat
yeah.
area, and so that if people have questions and want to reach out to you, and
I'll
I
throw
really
my
want.
uh, I'll throw my LinkedIn link in there. And if anyone who's watching wants to connect on LinkedIn, I'm very active there. Would love to talk and learn from you guys, because I'm always trying to learn from people in the L&D world. So
Yeah.
please do reach out to me, and would love to get a conversation going, because this is the space that I'm kind of trying to learn from and make inroads with, because that's, I think, where it's most applicable, to be honest. So
And it's important because, right, like you were saying before, L&D tends to be siloed, right?
yes,
And so like you reaching out and and us getting back to you, I think that's totally an important activity to participate in. So you guys reach out to Dan if you have any question. And Dan, anything you need, just let me know. Happy to
awesome.
have you participate in the community, and good luck to you in Zipline.
Thanks, Luis, and I'm looking forward to being at the expo.
Yeah,
Thanks for putting that on for us, and
sure.
very excited to see you guys there. So thanks a lot for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Thursday, we have Jen Jakovsky. We're talking about the importance of perception in training. So don't miss that on Thursday. Sign up for that one, and we'll see you later. Take care.
Awesome.